The story of Esther is a tale that many people might not find very appealing, partly because it's filled with mass violence, marked with hangings from the gallows and slaughter of thousands by the sword. It's also blatantly sexist, with the king of the Persian Empire discarding his queen because she wasn't willing to be paraded around before his drinking buddies. And after dumping her, he decides to conduct a nationwide beauty pageant to see who will be the queen's replacement. But for all its flaws, the story is also one that has excited the imagination of its readers for centuries. It has been the subject of movies, novels, paintings, and opera, musical stage productions, and yes, even VeggieTales. The story almost reads like a fairy tale, with Esther's Cinderella-like beauty propelling her from an obscure life as an orphan all the way to the Persian throne. Her older cousin Mordecai and a host of eunuchs take on the roles of fairy godmothers, prompting Esther and grooming her for her position as the new queen of Persia. The story even has an evil villain with his dastardly plan to destroy all the Jews of the land backfiring on him. And so with all its subplots and court intrigue, it makes for a fun story if one is willing to overlook its sexism and violence. For Jews, the story is the basis of their holiday of Purim, which includes wearing masks and costumes, eating a festive meal, enjoying a comic performance in the form of a spiel, and as well as sending out food parcels and giving to charity. But for Christians, the legitimacy of Esther's story as part of the canon of Christian scripture has been the subject of debate. One reason is because it contains no direct reference to God. Still, it emphasizes God's faithfulness when we are faithful to God. But the story is also significant to the LGBT community. And in fact, I think it's one of the greatest coming out stories in the Bible. As the story goes, as a Jew, Queen Esther was a member of an ethnic and religious minority within the Persian Empire. But the king didn't know it. You see, Esther passed as a Persian, but the world's full of haters, and Haman, the king's right-hand man, was an #1 hater. He convinced the king to issue an edict that would condemn all the Jews of the land to death. Now, at this point, Esther had a choice, as do all LGBT folk who live their lives in the closet. She could protect her own skin by keeping the secret that she was in fact a Jew, knowing that in so doing, all her people would be slaughtered. Or she could use her position of influence as queen to persuade the king to reverse the edict. She could come out about her identity as a Jew and explain to the king that enforcement of the edict would actually mean her own death. But coming out always carries with it risks, doesn't it? If things went well for Esther, the king would say, "I would have never thought that you were a Jew. You're nothing like I imagined Jews to be like." Because of his love for her, his worldview would have changed, and he would have reversed the law that called for the death of the Jewish people. And in fact, that's exactly how the story goes. It has a relatively happy ending, at least from the Jewish perspective. But there was no guarantee that it would end that way. It could have as easily ended with the king being outraged by Esther's deception. He could have tossed her out on the streets just the way he had tossed out her predecessor. And Esther could have shared the same fate of death as the king had proclaimed against her people. There was no guarantee for Esther, and there is no guarantee for anyone today who is living in the closet. Whether they are closets of HIV status, closets of gender expression, or closets of sexual orientation. There are no guarantees that you won't experience rejection, ridicule, discrimination, or worse. But for Esther, it was worth it. Living authentically and claiming her true identity was worth all the risks that went with it. Esther was willing to summon every ounce of courage she could manage to come out as a Jew. But the question is, why? Why was she willing to place her life at risk? What was so important about coming out that she was willing to die if necessary? One thing I think compelled her to claim her Jewish identity was her concern for others. You see, closets are all about self-preservation, so much so that there is no room for concern about anyone else. When a person makes the decision to come out of the closet, it's often because she or he recognizes that in so doing, they can become part of a movement that is making a difference in the world. By standing with others who are out and proud, they make it easier for the next person to step out of the closet. Esther came out as a Jew because her people were at risk of losing their lives. She was able to take the risk because in so doing, there was a chance of saving the lives of others. Make no mistake, when you and I step out of our closets, we are also saving the lives of others. Another reason that Esther may have come out of the closet was because of the pressures in her own life that would have resulted from the secret she was keeping. Paul Tournier has said, "Nothing makes us so lonely as our secrets." There's nothing in the Bible that says Esther suffered from the secrets she was keeping, but I can't imagine it not to be the case. She had renounced her Jewish heritage on the one hand, and she knew she really wasn't Persian on the other hand. Life in the no man's land of closets can be oppressive and lonely. And after a while, the pressure of all those secrets and all that loneliness begins to wear away at one's spirit. The solution is to take those first hesitant and frightening steps out of the closet. That's the only way we can be free from the pressures of our secrets. Esther came out because of her concern for others. She possibly came out because of the pressure she was experiencing in her own life. But I also think her coming out was out of a sense of faithfulness to God. Esther was born Jewish. Her Jewishness was part of her DNA makeup. It was her identity. And to pretend to be otherwise was to deny who God had created her to be. One can only do that for so long. The psalmist said, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." God intentionally created each of us the way we are, and we have been fearfully and wonderfully made. Lives lived in the closet are statements that God made a mistake. And not just any old mistake, but a shameful and disgraceful mistake. Closets exist when the opinions of other people are more important than the calling of God. It takes courage to come out of the closet. A lot of courage. More courage than we might imagine we possibly possess. Taking the risks and facing the fears that loom before us can seem too much for us. But one thing you can be sure of, when the closet becomes too unbearable, God will be there for you, and so will this church. There is hope and freedom outside the walls of closets. And we stand together in this church, united in the call to heal a broken world, even as we heal the brokenness in our own lives.